Okay, I'd just like to talk to you about curriculum enhancement. The term that we use within the SMART curriculum methodology is about investment, is about enhancing curriculum and putting resources where it's needed. But it must have a base understanding. It's a piece of language that we've got very used to using within CJ Learning and the SMART curriculum method, but it needs to be understood by you as a user of this methodology. We need to have a baseline from which our understanding is built of what is an additional investment, what's an enhancement, and that baseline is drawn from three pieces of information. The number of children that are, or number of learners that are in the institution, the target average class size that we are aiming for, and the number of lessons within the cycle. Now those three things matter. The number of learners in the institution, I often ask schools when I'm beginning an analysis, what's the right size of curriculum for the learners that are in the building at this point in time? It's not based on, well, we've always done it this way, or we have a PAN of 210, but we've only got 150 in the building in a year group. The target average class size, we tend to be quite on the generous side in suggesting that 27 over a year group, 27 learners in a class within a year group is a target to work through. Now that would allow for smaller classes in design technology or targeted in a specific place that you want to achieve some enhancement. If you do the calculations based on a fairly typical Key Stage 3 structure, you will see that even with DT, as with smaller class sizes, the average class size is well above 27. It may be 28.5 or higher even, depending on the proportions of time that you're giving to each element and the style of cycle that you have in place. The cycle are the number of lessons over a number of days that you have planned curriculum to be delivered. In a lot of schools that's 5 days, and if you've got 5 periods in a day, that's a 25 period cycle. If it's a 10-day cycle and it might have 5 periods a day or 4 periods a day, then it would be 50 or 40 periods in the cycle. But we need to know each element, each strand across the organisation, how many of those are in the cycle. So 3 bits of information: learner numbers, target average class size, and the cycle size. Now, what we're aiming for is the planned curriculum time and the planned bought teaching time. So the baseline is a product of those pieces of information that we have at hand. The baseline curriculum is the total number of learners divided by the average class size multiplied by the cycle, and that will give me a mass of lessons, a number of lessons that would be provided across the cycle, where every one of the classes had an average class size of my target. Let's say it's 27. Now, if we wanted to reduce class sizes in particular places for particular need, if that's what we choose to do, some would say that's not necessary, that we keep the average class sizes high because that releases funds to resource elsewhere. But if we want to keep it so that we can invest for a specific need, and some schools in challenging circumstances might need to invest, then we will plan an enhancement. The enhancement is an amount of time that is focused on reducing the class size for a specific purpose. The question is, how much is that enhancement? And we're suggesting that in terms of figures that we have produced over time, that up to about 8% enhancement is affordable within the funds that we have. So, but this is coming from an understanding of what's the baseline provision. The baseline is where we start. The enhancement is that extra bit of decision, and it can be agile in the sense that it can be placed around the school. Now, anything over that 8% would be considered to be an excessive amount or a surplus of planned curriculum time. Our experience is that many schools have large amounts of curriculum in this much more than 8% provision over the baseline provision. So this is what we refer to as curriculum enhancement. It is a controlled investment of time and resource focused on delivery. And it's planned so that it can be reviewed, because whether it's having effect or not will be determined by the outcomes. And those outcomes may not just be examination results. They may be in terms of behaviour, attendance, engagement, and a whole lot of other measures. Above that would be considered surplus. Now, in terms of planned teaching time, we talk about the curriculum enhancement being the level of investment within the curriculum. Now, we would then say that you are then going to buy a baseline staffing amount to meet that planned need. So the bought teaching time is a response to the planned curriculum time. Now, you might suggest that that's what we're buying that time, but our experience would suggest that certainly in complex large schools you do need some enhancement to enable blocking and structuring to happen. So the reduction of split classes is a very common aim within a lot of secondary schools, particularly. Not very rarely in the primary is that a matter, but at that level of enhancement is an amount of provision over and above our baseline need, our baseline staffing need, which is built on the curriculum enhancement. That's the level of staffing that we would consider adding. Now, that enhancement might vary, and generally we would suggest in large schools 3 to 5% extra. In small schools, 4-form entry schools and 5-form entry schools, that might be between 5 and 8%. Now, again, 8% is a good marker. In a single form entry primary school with 25 hours in a week, the 8% is basically 2 hours. Now, it might be that we're suggesting that you might buy 2 extra hours of teaching time to provide some support. Now, that's different from the contact ratio. That's different from allowing management time, so teachers who have time to do the wider responsibilities away from facing classrooms. This is about provisioning curriculum with children. They have a full timetable and they need teachers to teach them for the whole of that cycle. So this is about provisioning the delivery. So here is our planned curriculum time. This is not just about FTE teachers. This is about how much time do I need to buy. The baseline staffing is relative to what we've planned. The enhanced staffing is to allow, particularly in secondary schools, some delivery structures to occur, and we would suggest that keeping that within the 8% is essential, because otherwise it becomes unaffordable, and obviously that's scaled according to the levels of pay that staff might have. And then above that we would then be moving into surplus. Now, again, this is a figure that is again from experience, so it may be anecdotal, but I would suggest that we've certainly in the evaluations that we've done, we've seen many secondary schools where the level of surplus is more than the size of a moderate scaled primary school. So 250 to 350 teaching periods surplus above that enhancement level. And that would be sufficient teaching time to deliver a whole of a primary school. And that's the kind of level of surplus that I'm referring to. Now, moving on into how we get to this point of surplus. It's a question of what I refer to as curriculum drift. Now, curriculum drift starts from our understanding that we've just worked through of a baseline. The baseline, let's say in this school, it's 2,000 learning hours, 2,000 hours of delivery. Doesn't matter on the cycle size, we're just going to work on an example. So the curriculum is designed at that level. They might have decided that this basic position needs to be enhanced, and we're suggesting the maximum enhancement of 8%, which in this case would be 160 teaching hours. So this school has planned 160 teaching hours above the 2,000, so 2,160 hours. Now, in a lot of schools, certainly within the recent past, the mindset and the methodology has been focused around gaining teaching skills in basic subjects. So we are seeing further enhancement of English, maths and science. And I hear quite often, if we can overstaff in English, maths and science, we will do so. So if people come along and they're credible teachers and we've got the money to do so, we will buy extra maths, extra English and extra science. But obviously the issue will be that we don't want to buy people and not do anything with them. So we need to then create curriculum so that these people can be teaching. So quite often we've planned extra curriculum for these people. So our curriculum in the example that you've got in front of us here goes from 2,000 hours to 2,274 hours fairly quickly. So we're adding a considerable amount of teaching time on top of the original planned baseline. Now, that's within 1 year. When we come to the following year, if the staff that were brought in, these extra staff, the additional staff, were given curriculum and they're given classes, and we've structured the organisation to embed them into the delivery, we've now grown the curriculum from 2,000 hours to 2,274 hours. Now, your example might be different, but this is the trend. You'll recognise that. So our start point now is 2,274. And then it's very easy, without that understanding of baseline, which we've just described and is often missed, we then start to consider additional growth. So an extra bit of that 8% is then added again. And then we're in that mindset, well, if we've got these people and they're embedded, and it may not happen over 1 year, it may happen over 2 or 3 years' time, we've got this mindset that, well, actually, we could grow this a little more. We've got capacity because we've embedded the costs and we've got used to the financial structure. So we add more. So our 2,000 baseline has now become 2,400. And then we look at adding more time from an English, maths and science. Now, in this case, I've just thought I'd take one person in my English, maths and science department. Now, this is an extreme. I'm making a point about the drift. It may be in your school that that's just been English and maths, or it may be that it's concentrated on just English or just maths. But the theory stands the same. The baseline is where we have this curriculum that's the right size for the children that are in the building at this time. In growing schools and reducing schools, that's even more challenging because the number of children within the school are changing year on year. But the idea of curriculum drift is the upward drift of planned curriculum time, because we embed certain values in our appointment and staff engagement strategies. That's that we are looking to enhance the curriculum and that we are looking to buy additional basic or core teaching staff. And if we don't have that understanding of where the baseline is, that will keep growing and growing and growing, and hence the theory of curriculum drift. Now, in this understanding of curriculum enhancement, we are now not looking at an emphasis on metric measurement. What we're looking at is profiling a curriculum. The curriculum that you see on the screen now is an all-through school, nursery to year 13, where the curriculum enhancement, that level, the product of learners, average class size and cycle, and therefore planned curriculum, tells me where I am putting my investment. Now, if we were to look at this profiling a little more deeply, we've already suggested that these charts show curriculum enhancement, that product of number on roll and the amount of curriculum that we've planned. So 2 examples of a secondary profile, 2 examples of a primary profile, and again that view of the all-through profile. Now, the two things that make a difference to curriculum enhancement, the charts that you see in front of you, the height of that blue line above the dotted line, which is the 8%, is that there are two factors that make a difference, are the number of roll and the amount of delivery time. Now, just as a rule of thumb, where the curriculum enhancement is high, the number on roll is low, or the amount of delivery time is high. Where the curriculum enhancement is low, the number on roll is high, or the delivery time is low. So I've planned less curriculum for more students, or I've planned more curriculum for less students. So where these numbers are high, this primary one over here in year 6, it could be that I've simply got 2 classes, but they are not full, which means the enhancement is high. That might be similar here, where I've got lots of curriculum with smaller numbers in year 13 in this secondary school. But it could also be in year Key Stage 4 here, that we've got full year groups, but we've planned lots of curriculum. Now, the additional curriculum might be there for a particular purpose, in that we might spread a broad and balanced curriculum. We've got lots of subjects in options, and we've planned some intervention in English and maths. So large amounts of curriculum, but their classes are full. Now, it also means that we can have a large amount of curriculum, but the curriculum is not full, as it may be the case here in year 13. Now, I can edit my curriculum delivery by saying, well, I'm going to reduce the amount of curriculum time I'm planning, which brings the average, that brings the curriculum enhancement below the 8% line, and maybe even to the 0. That means that more of the classes are nearer my average class size. Or I can just make sure that the classes that I have offered within a curriculum that is a normal sixth form entry with 6 classes, but the classes are full because they are full classes with classes nearer and above the 27. If you see the numbers go below, the chart go below the 0 line, it means that the provision has classes in it that are bigger than the averages that we're expecting. Now, in this case of Key Stage 3, they are below. The target's 27. So if we've got classes of 28, 29 and 30, you will see that number go below 0. In the 6th form, there is a slight difference because it's unusual, in fact it's almost nearly unheard of, to have an average class size in a 6th form at that number of 27. The OECD figures and the DFE surveying of average class size would suggest that the average across the country growing slightly in recent years from 17 to 17.6, but we would work out a 6th form, and certainly our modelling within Smart Curriculum, the 6th form is aimed at 17 because that's the national average class size. So we would expect to see a 6th form at around 17. We won't calculate it at 27 because that is unrealistic. If that's the case, you'll have massive enhancement suggested because obviously the provision is much higher. So that's unrealistic. So as far as we're concerned, in 6th form, the average class size we're heading for is 17. And in this case, the average class size might well be slightly larger than that, which is why these are below 0. So it could be that they've achieved 18, 19 or 20. And certainly if you have a particular type and style of 6th form and a particular type and style of curriculum provision, that's not unusual and certainly not unachievable. This is where we're seeing what we referred to earlier as threshold-focused curriculum, large investments where there are examination periods. You'd usually see intervention classes, smaller class sizes, the intervention specialists, or additional teaching time. In a slightly different approach, you'd find what would be referred to as a progress focus. So we're putting the investment of time, and it might be a similar amount of time, but at a different point. One example here you could suggest is kind of a middle way between a progress focus and a threshold focus, because this secondary curriculum is still very focused at the threshold of year 10 and year 11. What we would suggest that a threshold focused curriculum would look more like this kind of line. Earlier investment of time, enhanced earlier, so year 7 and 8, and then reducing over time to get an average class size within Key Stage 4 that's lower than the 8% provision, or certainly can sit at that 8%. So this kind of line of best fit that you see here would be that style of progress-focused curriculum. That's in curriculum profiling. The other primary you see here might vary over time, and it may be that there is some investment towards the threshold. There is considerable investment earlier on, and certainly some schools we are seeing this kind of profile of curriculum, which is strategized to ripple through the school, and you might see that change in a wave over time where resource stays with the students. But one would expect that if intervention is going on, it needs to be having an effect, and that effect is then seen in learning outcomes.